All right, it's Liam. I want to thank everyone at the Oasis Podcast, as you were.
Hello and welcome back to the Oasis Podcast, the ultimate audio guide to Oasis. And I'm very sorry. I know it's been like 4 days since I last podcasted, having done like one a day for a week, which is all a bit mad. But anyway, I'm joined today by our good friend, and it's been a long time since you've been on the podcast, Joel. Joel, how you doing?
I'm good. It feels like I'm part of something really quite big and important, as opposed to chatting with my mate James. I'm on the phone to someone who I've seen on Sky News and heard on Radio 5 Live talking about this stuff. So yeah, it's quite cool being on the other side of it, actually.
It's weird, isn't it? Like there's people in work who they know I like Oasis, and some people know I do a podcast. Some people know I like Oasis, and so but it doesn't really connect for a lot of people. And so I was getting I went into the office the other day and I got like, I see. Oh, you must have been happy about Oasis getting back together. And I'm like, you haven't got a clue. Like I was on bloody Sky News. Like, and like I am like the go-to bloody Oasis fan expert in the world. I was on Canadian TV and radio. Like, and then it's like, yeah, the tickets were they've got expensive or something, didn't they? And I'm like, oh fucking hell, here we go. So it's pretty mad.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, it's great because how enthusiastic would I have been about an Oasis reunion had you not been doing this for 7 years and dragged me along for the ride? And I don't mean that in the sense of I haven't enjoyed being part of to the small extent I have been, but just like I've had a reason to kind of revisit Oasis with much more frequency than I would probably have done, just because of the amount of time I don't spend listening to music now in my mid-40s. So as opposed to it being like I used to really like them back in the day, it was like, well, I mean, obviously I've got to pounce on the opportunity to get hold of some tickets and get involved. And thank God that in 2008 I signed up to a mailing list for reasons I couldn't tell you now.
So let's go back a bit. So what was your reaction from like all the rumors back and forth? I know we were texting about it, but what was your reaction to that whole build up?
I think I got a YouTube notification for something out, and it was like Oasis reunion rumors. I saw, that it was a short one. I thought I'd go and have a listen to that, see what he's talking about. And it's like, oh, that sounds like they might actually read. That was the first I'd heard of it, right? I've not had my ear to the ground. So it's like the Saturday, I was like, wow, that was completely out of the blue for me. And then, then sort of dug into it a little bit, listening to what you said and reading what else was available and seeing those kind of the post at the end of Liam's set at Reading, amongst other things. It's like, it feels a lot like they might actually reform the band, And then, sure enough, like Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday came around, and that is exactly what happened. And it was, I just went from being a casual fan, with a mate who runs a podcast who could be relied on for any interesting nuggets periodically, to like, it's on the front page of the newspaper again. And like, I put the telly on and they're talking about, in fact, they're on, put the telly on and my friend James is talking about Oasis. Like, the anchor from Sky News is hanging off his every word on the subject. So that was all a bit mad. But yeah, it's been great. It was genuinely exhilarating because of my connection to the band, largely because of this podcast and your community of massive Oasis super fans. So it was a much more meaningful moment than it would have been had you not decided to start doing this 7 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's mad. Oh dear. But yeah, and I was just thinking back to us, like, when we would sit around in sixth form, and we would always just be like, yeah, but the thing about Oasis is, but that was like our go-to line, like, yeah, but the thing about Oasis, like that, there was, because every other band you'd listen to be like, oh yeah, I really like that new Echo Belly album, or I really like that new Cooler Shaker song, or whatever. It's like, yeah, but Oasis, you know, we would always go back to them, and that was you know, and they were such a defining part, weren't they? And then obviously in the band, like the James and the Joel was the Liam and the Noel.
Yeah, I mean, it rhymes, so it must have been true, right? And we had a quarter Irish as opposed to fully. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I would have been excited about their reunion on some level because it would have resonated with my much younger self. Um, and my much younger self, I suspect, would have been deeply amused at the thought that 30 years down the road, you'd be the one on Sky News being the aficionado on the reasons for it, you know, the voice of the people where it came to Oasis, as I suspect would any number of our school chums that would have found that deeply amusing, that it was you that was
Yes.
the unofficial spokesperson for the Oasis fans. Yeah.
Well, it's funny as well because obviously, like, I'm not, you know, I do the podcast, but like, you know, when people are, you know, we're going to talk about definitely maybe 30th in a minute, and you've got people that are like, oh, I bought it. That's like the fifth time I bought definitely maybe, or, you know, and these people that literally know every bootleg, have their like Liam Shrine, have their like, you know, and I'm like, I'm not that much of a fan, you know, and like, and I have been, you know, because when it's like, oh, so when did you get into Oasis? And I said, oh yeah, in like 1994 when the album came out. It's not really true. Like it was much later in 94. Like I remember Cigarettes and Alcohol coming out, and I remember being aware of them culturally, but it was really like whatever was the first one, like coming up to Christmas 94, when you're like, that's really good. Like, so yeah, so that I do take a little bit of poetic license. But yeah, no, it is funny to be like the official super fan. And yeah, and I do I do think it's like with like Will, our mate Will, who kind of he was the one that, you know, he's been on this. He got us into you know, it was his tape, I think, from his older brother that we shared around. And then it was like, so he was really the biggest fan that got us into them. But then he didn't keep going with it. You know,
No.
he's not been on it ever
Well,
since.
yeah, I mean, I would say if I think about your relationship with all things Oasis, you're more of an archivist or a biographer than you are a fan in
Yeah.
terms of what it is that you do, you know, because you've captured this immense body of information about them from lots of different angles and lots of different people. And that's probably a unique perspective to have because there won't be so many people going around hoovering up all the interest. I know you've got YouTubers that have basically followed in your footsteps and talked to everyone that you once talked to about the band. Uh, but you probably don't have lots of people that have done that. There'll be people that are more into the music and have listened to more, you know, and definitely maybe more times than you do. But they probably haven't gone and sought out the studio engineer from the first album, or the guy that arranged the horns, or the guy that played the harmonica, or the guy who's played in the support band 10 years later, or all the different angles that you've attacked it from. And that's kind of, you know, that's your niche. You might not have a Liam tattoo on your backside, but you probably know more about what motivated the recording techniques that we used on the debut album than anybody else in the world.
Possibly. Well, I've probably forgotten it though, but I've spoken to more people about it.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
but somewhere on Spotify is a conversation in which you absolutely heard it first, you know?
yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is true.
So
And
fair
it's like
play,
when
fair
James
play.
Hargreaves interviews someone and it's like, yeah, as they said to the Oasis podcast, I'm like, oi. But no, Hargreaves is always welcome to use my stuff, and he does credit. He is a good lad. And a
Yeah.
fine musician. So let's yeah, so then talk to me about the tickets when you got your so you did get the notification. What happened with the
We
pre-sale?
got the notification. I was pretty relaxed about it because I have a bit of a faith in if I'm sent an email from an official site and I tick the right boxes, generally speaking, what I'm told is going to happen will happen. So I was pretty relaxed about it all. Wanted the tickets, obviously, but the Friday evening came round, signed in at 6:30, joined a waiting list for first night at Wembley because Wembley's pretty convenient for me to get to. Not the first gig back, but you know that involves collections to Cardiff. Can't be bothered. Um, got in, was 2,969th in the queue at 7 o'clock. So, and that ticked down by before 7:10. I was actually in Ticketmaster, which I've not used for like ever, basically. And so I did a bit of a research beforehand, just working out what it looks like to go and find a ticket at Wembley. It wasn't at all like that. It was very different how it was laid out. Just went in, said I wanted a seated ticket. It just said, you can have these tickets in the first tier. This is the cost. It was at the top end of the kind of quoted range for seats. But I was like, I'm not going to get offered another one, am I? So I'll take those, and they will be good seats. So I bought 4 tickets. At the listed price for the tickets that they were. But I didn't have a choice to choose different seats at a different cost. I was just given them. Have these or don't come was basically the offer. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. You know, it's a once in a lifetime. So yeah, hit pay, like, you know, whatever it was, 700 quid later, I got the email saying, well done, you come see Oasis. It was done by 7:10.
So dead easy. I don't know what all those other fuckers on Saturday were on
because
about.
everyone was saying to me, the 3 people that I talk to that go to gigs these days, had asked me if I was going to see Oasis or if I could, and they were like, just be prepared to graft. It's hard work. Graft was the expression. It's hard work on Ticketmaster. And I went and did that, and I was like, piece of piss. What's everyone complaining about? That was really easy. Anyway, Saturday morning, like, we were trying to get some other tickets in the general sale, obviously, like, with a lot less riding on it, because I've got the tickets I really wanted at the price that I really wanted to pay on the Friday. Tried to log in at 8 o'clock. Like, the phone it didn't even sit in a waiting room. It just sat on a blank screen for an hour. At 9:10, I was like, I'll refresh. We refreshed the 2 phones. Mine just got kicked out hopelessly of Ticketmaster. And I was accused of being a bot. And I was like, well, you know, thank you very much. My wife did get through and was put in a queue for Cardiff at 220,000th in line. So just left that running and went about our day. I went out to play cricket in the afternoon. She messaged me about 3 o'clock, saying I'm at the front of the queue. The tickets are 400 quid each. I'm assuming you don't want them. I was like, no, that's too much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it was that or not go and see them, we probably would spend the money. But it's like, I don't want to pay 400 quid to watch a second gig. That's too much.
Yeah.
And then, like, the sort of, you know, I was out Saturday afternoon, but it kind of emerged into the evening. And then on Sunday, like, there'd been this massive issue where no one could get tickets, and when they could get through, it was much more expensive, and dynamic pricing, which I'd never heard of in the context of gig tickets. Makes sense when you're trying to increase supply, right? Dynamic pricing works for Uber, because you say you can get paid 3 times your fare if you go out in your car now and pick people up. It generates more taxis. You can't make a gig more expensive and make more seats, right? There are the same number of seats, which is why I couldn't really understand it as a concept. I know it's the thing that works, and legally it had been tested previously. But we're thinking there's no increase in the amount of supply. It's not like, well, you've got to pay 400 quid. But the great thing is we've expanded the capacity of Wembley by 30,000.
Oh, I know. It's madness. And I mean, just to jump on that, actually, so I suppose since I've last podcasted, there has been some news. So there's been 2 extra Wembley dates added. And there's this very bizarre, like, they did this statement that, like, so there's going to be a new ballot, invitational only for tickets, and they're going to give priority to people that were already on the mailing list or already had tried but didn't get in. So then I was thinking, how the hell are you going to do that? But I suppose what they're going to do is, like, run a check of, like, okay, these are all the people that have applied, and then they'll run a check against the people that, like, get rid of the bots, and then also get rid of anyone that's already got it. So for your email and your Ticketmaster and stuff, so me and you for our Ticketmaster apps or whatever, it'd be like, okay, don't let them in because they've already got them. So yeah, I imagine that's how it'll work. Obviously, everyone will just then use their partner like we've done, you know. But it's like, yeah. But anyway, so Wembley's been announced, 2 extra dates, this weird invitational only. I saw something the other day. I think someone had posted a picture of it. I don't know if it was on the Discord or on Twitter, but someone had posted, like, a picture of a poster, like, I think on the Underground, and it was like for the Oasis Wembley shows. It's like, there is literally no need to advertise that Wembley show on the Underground. I think you're going to sell out. I think you might have wasted a few quid there with that poster. But
It's bonkers. It's genuinely bonkers that there is the level of interest equivalent, I would say, to the run up to the release of Be Here Now. Because Morning Glory didn't have that sort of fanfare. I mean, they were a very big band before it was released, but they weren't stratospheric. Whereas Be Here Now came out and they had a 1-hour BBC special about the album the night before it was released. on a Thursday because they didn't need a whole week to get to number one in the charts, right? You know, and it's been like that again.
Yeah.
But this is 27 years later, and they've not been a band for 15 years. It's like actually the only other band that would command that level of public interest is the Beatles. The Rolling Stones wouldn't generate that amount of front page news. I mean, they've never been away, so there's perhaps not the same level of interest, but they just wouldn't do.
No.
It would have to be the Beatles performing, which obviously, you know, for lots of other reasons they can't do anymore, would generate that sort of interest. It's just crazy because obviously, you know, they were the band of our youth, but they're clearly like culturally hugely significant. Just looking at that, it's like the BBC don't generally dedicate the front page to a new tour by a band for 50-year-olds.
No, I think it's absolutely right. I mean, you've seen on the front page of the newspaper, like, you know, obviously this, I don't know whether or not, if there hadn't been all these problems with the tickets, I don't know if like the story would have dragged on, it would have had more front pages. Like the front pages have been generated by the fact it was such a balls up. And so, I mean, so the fact it's dragged on for over a week, I think is more because of that. And so maybe you could say, well, they're happy with that because at least they're, you know, any publicity is good publicity, I suppose.
But the reason that it's still newsworthy is because of how significant the event is.
Yeah.
If there'd been a cock up for tickets to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, you know, just thinking about something else where it's very difficult to get hold of a ticket because it sells out, I just don't think it would have been discussed on Loose Women.
No. Apparently it was today. I was like,
yeah, well, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw someone on Discord saying like, I'm working from home today. I'm going to put on Loose Women. They're apparently going to talk about it. Like, you know what? No, as much as I do love the Oasis discourse, I think I could draw a line at watching Loose Women.
Yeah.
So, and then the other news, I suppose, is that Oasis did put out a statement finally. So we were wondering like what's going to happen. Still, Liam's not said anything. So he's still obviously locked in someone's basement. Really, he's in. Apparently, this is what we believe is that they are all currently in the south of France. So whether that's rehearsal, whether that's just meetings to flush this stuff out and figure it out, I don't know. But yeah, Noel had said on Matt Morgan's podcast he was heading off to the south of France, and Liam. I think Lennon's girlfriend was pictured in the south of France or something. So it sounds like they're probably in the south of France together right now, which is great, you know, which is interesting. Let's hope that is, you know, that will bear fruit and like, you know, and that whatever they're doing out there, they're figuring this stuff out. But so the announcement on Twitter was basically, it was a bit of a fudge, I thought. It wasn't an announcement on Twitter. It was like an announcement given to like PA media or something. Because it's like they've not said, oh, it wasn't our fault, because there's been a lot of kind of, oh, well, it wasn't their fault. It wouldn't have been up to them. They can't choose. And it's like, well, hold on, no, well, they would have been able to choose. Other artists have chosen not to have this sort of dynamic pricing. So what they said was, it needs to be made clear that Oasis leave decisions on ticketing and pricing entirely to their promoters and management. They had at no time had any awareness that dynamic pricing was going to be used, while prior meetings between promoters, Ticketmaster, and the band's management resulted in a positive ticket sales strategy, which would be a fair experience for fans, including dynamic ticketing to help keep general ticket prices down. Bullshit, as well as reduced touting. That bullshit wasn't part of the quote, by the way. That was my commentary.
Thanks for clarifying.
The execution of the plan failed to meet expectations. Yeah, it did. All parties involved did their utmost to deliver the best possible fan experience, but due to the unprecedented demand, this became impossible to achieve. So they're saying it was agreed, Ticketmaster and the management, which we believe would be Ignition, agreed dynamic pricing, but Oasis, which I suppose is Liam and Noel, leave decisions on that entirely to their promoters and management. Now, I'm sorry, but if it was me, if we're doing the Vision reunion and the management are like, oh, by the way, like, just leave it up to us, guys. We'll figure it out, the ticket prices. Okay, no problem. I'll leave it up to you. I think there'd be a conversation, right? I think there'd be a little bit of well, this is the option here. We can leave off dynamic pricing, and it will all sell out. And, assuming it sells out, you'll make 30 million quid. Or we can turn on dynamic pricing, and assuming it sells out, you'll make 60 million quid. If the difference in what you could earn is that significant, I very much doubt that Liam and Noel had nothing. Oh, that's fine, Marcus or Alex. You go off and make the negotiation with Ticketmaster. We'll leave it up to you. You know what I mean? If it makes it sound like they're a just turned over amateur boxer that's like being swindled by some dodgy boxing promoter. They know what they're doing. They're bloody Noel's the chief.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you would think that they would be told what it is that people were going to be charged as a range. Are we thinking like 70 to 400 quid now, depending on how many people sign up? And they go, yeah, that's fine. Great. They wouldn't just be like, oh, you're charging them £1,000 each, are you? Or you're charging them a tenner each, are you? And if someone said to me, like, it'll be 30 million quid if it's option A and 60 million quid if it's option B, and option B has this dynamic pricing. So what? Why is option B so much better? Oh, yeah, because when we get close to selling out, we'll charge the last few people an absolute fortune for tickets. So, okay, could we not just charge everyone the same and then not have a backlash?
Yeah.
Could we not do that instead? Because ultimately, like, you could have made £60 million by charging everyone. I mean, I don't know what the delta is, but like, instead of charging someone 100 and someone else 400 for the same ticket, why not just charge everyone 200,
Yeah.
250, or whatever what, depending on the proportions, right? Why don't you charge everyone that bit more? Because then no one's going to moan. Because there'll absolutely be precedents of other acts that are charging silly amounts of money for bands to be seen that would be more than Oasis are charging. And ultimately, like, probably not giving you as many dates as Oasis were doing with the 17 that they were due to play.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it doesn't ring true that they had no idea. They might not have known the minutiae of it because it's clearly quite a complicated way of pricing tickets, but they would have understood that some people are going to pay 2.5 times the price for the same seat as the person sat next to them, depending on when they get through in the queue.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No,
but look, ultimately, if the top price anyone pays is 2.5 times the face value of the ticket, which is what I think the dynamic pricing works out at, and they're actually pretty rigid with the tout so that people don't end up dropping £4,000 for a standing ticket via StubHub or via GoGo, then those fans, who would still have bought those tickets, by the way, are much better off as a result. And I have less of an issue with that because I'd rather Oasis took the balance of the money because they're the ones providing entertainment. Tickets out for me provide zero value.
Yeah.
They don't make any money for the band. They're just taking money off the punters.
Yeah.
They're an unnecessary cog in the wheel. If you've got like an act that won't sell out, then upfronting the tickets and taking the risk on that you can't sell it out is different. Oasis were always going to sell out every show they played in the UK. So, I'm all for them being, as long as they can do it. I don't know how they'll police it in practice, but like, I would love to see every ticket that's gone on StubHub and via GoGo cancelled.
Yeah. I
That would be
don't know,
great.
like you said, how the hell they would do that. I mean, I know from having gone to Reading, I've not done this sort of ticket transfer before, but I did it for Reading, and because it said, if one person, typically one person will buy the tickets, but if you go into Reading, you'll be going in and out, and so it's like, so it says, please transfer your tickets to all the individuals, so they've got it on their app on their phone. It was like, oh, okay, cool, that's a good idea. So we went through and the process, and it was like, it's very straightforward. You request it and you allow it, and off you go. And so I don't know how they could police that, because if I want to give you one of my tickets, then all I do is, and then if I say, actually, John, no, you need to give me 1,000 quid, then I make you give me £1,000 bank transfer, and then I give you I transfer the ticket to you on my phone. So how they would police it, I mean, I'm sure they could figure it out, but to me, it doesn't feel like it's something that would feasibly be policeable just based on how I know how the app works.
Yeah, well, that's for another day. But yeah, it's been nice to have got you another round of interviews with various media outlets, hasn't it?
It did. I'm now sick of them again. I did the I haven't podcasted since I did this, but I did a round of them on BBC local radio, which was hilarious. So I did. I'm not adding in the clips of all of them, but it was funny because it was all like Radio Derby, Radio Nottingham. There was a lot of like northern ones and Midlands ones. There was like Radio Bristol, and obviously then you hear you're sort of like literally, okay, hang up, next one, do it, hang up, next one. And then it's like and it's like Radio Bristol, it was like, okay, hi James, yeah, well, we're just finishing this piece, we'll come to you next. Okay, fine. And then you sit there in the background listening. And the guy was so Bristol, but he was that kind of Bristol host, the host of the Oasis podcast, like that, and that kind of proper like in Hot Fuzz, that sort of Hot Fuzz voice, that kind of proper Bristolian, like Cheltenham sort of way. Love it. It was so funny. And the piece before I went on was like some farmer talking about like, now it's spider season, but you don't get as many spiders now, so you're not getting the butterflies, and then you don't get the butterflies, and that doesn't get the bats. And so it's just, it's like, right, thanks very much there. Now on to James from the Oasis podcast, like that. It was fucking funny, but yeah, I did enjoy that. And then I was supposed to go on Sky News again, and the bastards bumped me. So fuck Sky News. But I was I was all set to go, ready to go, and I think I'd cancelled something as well. I cancelled something to go on, and they said, okay, great. And then I messaged them, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we've decided to go with a different. My editor wants to go a different route. Okay. And I flicked it on, and it was the manager of Razorlight, and then some like security, like ticket expert or something. And to be fair, they had far more knowledge than I did on the subject. Obviously the Razorlight manager guy knew from a band side, and this guy knew all the ins and outs of the ticket stuff. So I was like, oh, well, fair enough. They know a lot better than me. But I had better hair, and I would have been funnier because they're boring old bastards. So there you go.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad your self-esteem hasn't taken the hit.
Never. Right. Let's talk about
Definitely
Maybe then, shall we?
Yes, that's
So the 30th anniversary album is out, and from the previous anniversaries that we've had from other albums, it's generally been, well, ever since like the Chasing the Sun ones, where we got some extra tracks and we got the Mystique demos and stuff. But ever since then, it's been slim pickings. It's just been vinyls, and there's not been really anything. And I was just always hoping for, we knew there was stuff out there. We knew there was Mono Valley stuff. We knew there was Sawmill stuff, and we got it. Like, we finally got it. So now the album itself, I believe, has been remastered, but I haven't looked into that. And to be honest, I don't have an ear for it. I couldn't listen to the 94 version, the 2018 version, the 2024 version, and tell you the difference. I know your ears are a bit more attuned to that, but the album, I presume, has been remastered and sounds better because it's not saying like 2018 remaster, but I couldn't tell you, and even if I listened to them back to back, I don't think I could tell you.
Yeah, I don't think an album as well produced as that in the last 30 years you'd notice a huge amount of difference on a remaster, unless possibly you were listening on, those ultra clear studio speakers. I think, and because obviously each time you listen to an album, it's in the car or it's on your headphones, or God forbid, it's just playing out the tinny speaker on your phone. I don't think you get the benefit of those incremental improvements on the mastering time after time. It's not like a fundamental remix, right? It's the same song. They're just playing with the overall sound of that single track. That's everything mixed together. So no, I mean, I've listened to bits of the most recently released album because it was the easiest one to click back and forth to between that and the Mono Valley or outtakes version, just to pick out the differences between the two. So no, I certainly wouldn't be buying. I mean, I bought it, which is the first one I bought for a long time, a physical CD, but I wouldn't have bought it if it was just the definitely maybe original 11 tracks remastered. I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference because again, I'd be listening to it on a different sound system to the one that I listened to definitely maybe on 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, no, I know. And like with the Beatles one, like with some of the Beatles remasters, what they did there was like deliberately went in and lifted certain things in the mix. Like it was like, oh, well, now we've got this technology, we've got the multi-track studios, they can go and use the AI and they can separate out the tracks. And so, like, I remember the White Album one, Savoy Truffle, like the horns were bigger. Lady Madonna had more of like Ronnie Scott plays the trumpet on it or whatever. Is it the trumpet? I don't know. Anyway, whatever instrument Ronnie Scott played, he played it on that track. And it's been pulled out a saxophone, isn't it? It's the little sax when they're going ba 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 ba. He's going that is brighter and bigger, and there's a little bit more at the end. So I think with the Beatles you can hear it, but like you said, it's because it's a remix, like Noel's 2016 do you know what I mean? Remix. They go physically changing the essence of the song, whereas I don't think it is. I think it is just a remaster. But yeah, but then obviously the buying point really for us for this one, for the Oasis nerds, and for me like Husey, the mad Irish guy that I did the interview with the other day, his comment was like, why would I buy a bunch of tracks that weren't deemed to be good enough to be released? And I understand that if what you're after as a music listener is like the best songs, like I just want, there's a song called Digsy's Dinner. Well, what's the best version of Digsy's Dinner? I'll listen to that. You know what I mean? Like, but for me, and I think for a lot of us, super fans, it's like I'm not just interested. If they released 12 versions of Dixie's Dinner, I'd listen to all of them because it's the incrementations, it's the changes, it's the story, and it is like when you're looking at an artist and there's, variations and you're looking at the history of the ideas of when those, the Cubism period moved into the blue period and all that sort of stuff. That to me is what's really interesting about it. And the fact it's not as good, actually the bits that aren't as good are the most interesting bits for me because that's what makes it jump out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And there's just little bits like, I mean, we could go track by track, but you could tell that Mono Valley is earlier than the final version because Liam hasn't quite got the shine bit in Rock and Roll Star on the Mono Valley version. So had they not re-recorded that album, we may not have been treated to years of shine over and over again. You'd obviously come to that later. So yeah, you're right. I think it's interesting more as in the way that the anthology was interesting with the Beatles, where it's like you could hear the evolution of a song
Yeah.
from like very rough sketch to like Strawberry Fields Forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I know substantially similar the two things, but there are some interesting points. Like, oh, I can see how this has evolved from when they did it first time round, and it may be that they were doing the stuff that ended up on the final version already, and they just didn't pick those out for the day they did the Mono Valley versions. But
Yeah.
it does feel like those are almost like demos for Definitely Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's how I felt about it. And also there's little bits where it felt like I was listening to like an Oasis live recording, like Live by the Sea or something. Just stuff like the fact that on the Mono Valley version of Dixie's Dinner, they like Noel's doing his harmony over the verse, and he does that live, and so it's like, so it didn't jump out to me. It was like, oh, he does that live. And so whereas those little things that you think, oh, he's introduced that as a live thing, it wasn't. It was something that he did originally, and then obviously they decided not to go with on the record, but then he pulled it back for
Yeah,
the album.
and Alcohol, there's a lot of vocal harmony in the Mono Valley version that I remember at Wembley, was the first time I saw them live in 2000, him doing that backing vocal line and being like, oh, Noel's harmonizing on Cigarettes and Alcohol. But it's like, oh no, he'd done that on the first time they recorded it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to your point, yeah, it's really interesting like hearing that stuff.
Go on, and let's go track by track then. Where do you want to start?
Well, so if we just do it in order that they appear. So Rock and Roll Star hasn't yet got that iconic lead guitar line coming over the top. It's just the kind of rhythm guitar that sits underneath it. Makes it sound really quite different. And everything is Whereas definitely maybe it's this like glorious sludgy soup of noise and it all bleeds together. It's a lot cleaner, isn't it? The whole thing is much like you can pick out the different bits that are being played. Rock and Roll Star lacks some of the lead guitar work that ended up on the final version. Like there's no solo after the second verse, which is great. I love the solo in Rock and Roll Star, and it's gone. It's just like an instrumental pass through the harmony back into was not as good either.
Yeah.
And he sings shine rather than shine.
Yeah.
I think you'd listen to that and think this is a great band. I don't feel like, there are a couple of them where it's like this isn't anything like as good as the final version. It's like that feels like the demo of a great, truly great song.
Yeah.
Just missing a bit of the finesse of the final version. And like I think it goes without saying that every one of them is cleaner and has that less of a wall of sound, which was the kind of signature Owen Morris maneuver.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still pretty great, obviously.
It is, but like you said, it's just funny to hear the lack of lead guitar, and then just little bits where it's like, oh, that's not where they go after that part. You just like, I think, and especially at the end, like it just moves in a different way. And I think there is a bit, I don't know now if it is in Rock and Roll Star, where there's like an extra little bit, and you're like, wait, did Liam forget to come in there? And then it comes back in, and it's like, okay, it just needed a little bit of tightening it up. But yeah, I know what you mean. And like Liam is 6 months younger, or well, not 6 months, like a couple of months younger, and you can just hear that maybe he's not quite got that got that confidence to just belt it out more. But
or as much rasp in his voice, which might be
yeah.
because he's had 6 months less of shouting every night and husking up.
That's true. That's true. All right, what's next then?
Shaker Maker.
Shaker Maker. So there is, this was an interesting one, the Mono Valley Shaker Maker. Go on, what's your thoughts on it?
Well, so the first thing is the intro. The guitar is really quite clean. I tell you what, it reminded me of a little bit. In Take Me Away at the end, he's like just doing a little arpeggio, and then there's sort of a slide guitar going. Woo-hoo. It's a bit spacey, but it's very clean guitar sound. Whereas Shaker Maker, to me, you listen back to the original, and the guitar is hyper distorted, and it sounds like alien noises. Like they're like, it's great, it's really melodic, but it's very clean, and you can hear every single note, and it's like, oh, that sounds like a bit more like the outro to Take Me Away. Is much less psychedelic, I think, than the final version, more so than the others. Like Shaker Maker in particular is much less psychedelic, and they obviously still got that the Coca-Cola verse that had to be taken out for copyright reasons, but that was on the Mono Valley demo.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's more of because it's obviously 12-bar blues, but it's got more of a like the status quo-y sort of just straight rock. Because it's sort of it's not quite got all the swirling psychedelia of it. But yeah, and it is nice to hear I'd like to teach the world to sing.
Well, my favorite bit of Shaker Maker is that sort of mid-late. I'm sorry, but I just don't know. Amazing, and that is absolutely massive. Like you listen to that, it's just enormous on the album. Whereas you can almost hear like the individual guitar strums in that bit, and it's got much less impact for it because they've obviously not piled everything on the way that they did when they finally came to record the version that made it to the final album.
And the next one's probably the biggest departure, I'd say, which is Live Forever. Very, very different.
Yeah. Well, so Will and I exchanged messages about the album last week, and he said, wow, isn't the Live Forever different without the drums at the start? I was like, yes. Not having the drums at the start makes a huge difference to that. And Liam's voice, again, is a bit cleaner. There's not quite as much attack in the way that he sings it. And some of the phrasing is a bit different. So I think it's, maybe I don't really want to know how you got it goes on lately. Did you ever feel the pain? whereas he kind of replicates the phrasing of the first is lately. Did you ever feel the pain? If you put them side by side, they're quite different, and it's not quite as good. But also because I'm more used to that original or the original version. And then what it doesn't have, which is one of my favorite bits of the song, is before the first chorus, the bass comes in with that the run that is mirrored in the guitar solo, which is a really nice like musical reference to later in the track because the bass has already come in playing the bass notes in the verse.
In the morning rain, as the soul shoots to the bone, maybe I just wanna fly, wanna live, but don't wanna
Much difference as it does is there's just a little bit, just a hint of swing in the drum beat that Tony's playing. It's like dum, 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 dum. If you listen, there's just a hint of swing, whereas in the demo version, it's very straight.
Right.
So it just feels a bit more sort of, it's still a fantastic song, obviously, but there's just not quite, it just doesn't bounce quite the same way as Live Forever does in the final version. And it's because I think there's like a sort of snare drum hit missing from the rhythm that he plays through the chorus.
Interesting.
It's just not, that sort of drives it a bit, and that they've not got that in there in the demo. And then the guitar sound for the solo is like much softer than the one that they use. Like it sounds like Slash. The guitar solo in the final version of Live Forever has got the distortion of like a Guns N' Roses solo, which I think is a good thing. Like it's a fantastic solo. Whereas it sounds more like a kind of Pearl Jam acoustic track with a lead guitar playing over the top of it. The sound of it sonically is nothing like as powerful.
And the double track vocals as well. Double track vocals really jumps out, which I don't think works as well. It's sort of, I understand why people do it, but it's it just I might much prefer the production on the original. But yeah, it's much more love songy, I think. It's not, whereas the finished version is like a moody kind of indie anthem. Whereas this just feels a lot more love songy, and it's sort of quite, a bit more acousticy, isn't it? And it's just not really there. But yeah, interesting to hear though.
It feels like a work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels like a work in progress in part because I've heard what the final version is. You know what I mean? I don't know whether I would say that if that was the only version. Because if I think about the others, excluding like the other really massive bands from 93, 94, quite rough and ready English guitar bands for 10 a penny, right? And that was the sort of level of production that a lot of them would be hitting. It's just we know what the definitely maybe as produced by Owen Morris sounds like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next up is probably the biggest difference, I'd say, which is the Up in the Sky Mono Valley version. So this was then released, so this I don't think I talked about it. We did a lot on the Columbia, can't build a wall straight as a javelin pole. So we did quite a lot on that. We did one on the sad song version, but then this came out as well. I meant to record about it, but then it didn't happen. But yeah, this is probably the most different, I'd say, in that you've got all the backing vocals. It's just so Beatlesy from a song that's already very sort of Beatles Revolver. It's just going full Revolver completely. But I really like it, actually. I really like all the extra backing vocals and stuff.
It feels like the most finished of the songs in some respects. I mean, it doesn't have that Owen Morris gold dust sprinkled on it, but it feels like the most finished of the demo songs. I mean, obviously there were tracks that made it onto the album, but of those demos on the definitely maybe 30, it feels like the most complete version because of all of the backing vocals. It doesn't feel like it's missing bits that were present on the final version. It feels like it's a different version of the same song.
And there's that bit near the end when he does a really Beatlesy, like or something. Like it's really, really sort of 60s-y. which I really like.
And
One of the things in there that annoys me though, and it's something I remember when we would record, that acoustic guitar sounds brilliant, but in a mix, sometimes all you get with an acoustic guitar is just the like, and that all the way through, it's got like a noise. And when you think about it and you hear it, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I can just hear it so much. I'm like, that's just really annoying. There's like and then I figured out what it is, because then at the very end, when it fades out and it's just got two guitar lines playing the do 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 do, and one of them's an acoustic guitar, and so he must be doing that dun da 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 riff all the way through on an acoustic and an electric, but because the acoustic doesn't cut through, you just get the all the way through. And as I say, I don't know if you spotted it, but it does my head in.
Well, it's a definitely like the riff is played on a different sounding guitar, and I'm not sure, because I've listened to it a few times and I can't decide whether the riff is also played like there's a slightly different order of notes in the riff in the demo.
Yes, I think it is actually. It's slightly different, yeah. Columbia, the Mono Valley version, which I think is, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Columbia as is Infamous. I actually quite liked the Sawmills outtake version. This one I think is just really like with the, you know, we're sort of saying about that kind of status quo-iness almost of on Shaker Maker, and I think that feels the same here. I think that Columbia, I suppose, is the song that you most want to be like a psychedelic kind of jam, whereas this just feels a bit, you know, my main issue with Columbia is it's ploddy, and I think the ploddiness is most obvious here in all the various versions of Columbia.
Yeah, I'd agree. It needs that big swirling psychedelic overlay to be with. Yeah, it doesn't have that. Liam's vocals a bit clean on it again. It's not as good.
Yeah. You know, and it's a shame that we don't get the come on, yeah. You know, that's sort of that just breaks it up, doesn't it? Gives you a bit of something else at the end. So right, next up is Bring It On Down. What do you think of that?
That one, it feels a lot like the live version that's on the Shaker Maker single, and it feels an awful lot like that. It's a great song, but again, I think that one needs that breakdown after the first chorus where you've just got like the sort of just like cymbals and then Liam's vocal distorted and the screeching guitars, because they do a similar thing in Headshrinker actually, and then it all kicks back in again. That's much less good when it's just Liam's voice unproduced in the same way as the previous line. It seems like a much less differentiated, interesting part of the song. And then the way the guitar solo feeds in after the second chorus, I don't like the sound of it anything like as much, and it doesn't drive. I think on the album version there's like a keyboard or kind of just going ding 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 in the background of
yeah.
And that's not on there as well, and that really drives the track. So, you know, that one again feels like a live demo. It's obviously still a great tune, but that one is really lacking. They're definitely maybe in terms of what their live sound is like. You can kind of tie the two together. It's like I can see why that live band would have recorded that album, whereas the Mono Valley versions by comparison versus that band, it's like, no, that's a lot cleaner than this band. Like this big snarling menacing wall of guitar noise is not being replicated on this album. Cigarettes and Alcohol I think gets closest of the ones that obviously Slide Away was a Mono Valley track, right? So they did manage to get that one out, but Cigarettes and Alcohol for me, the Mono Valley version, I mean, it's new, so it might just be the novelty, but I think that's almost as good as the finished version. I really liked it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Obviously, the main thing is that it's lacking lead guitar, so you don't get the, you know, in the intro you don't get the now, you know, you miss out a lot of that stuff. Vocals, and also what I like is that not having the lead guitar. I mean, it's like anytime when you're mixing, you know, if you're mixing music and you take things out and put things back in, it's always good fun. And watching, like, you know, the VH1 behind the music when they do that with the Who or, you know, various people, and it's just fascinating. As soon as you take something out, you can hear the two things. like on a more general point, I think what I really like is that when you can hear the two rhythm guitar tracks, and and then it's Bonehead playing bar chords and Noel playing what do you call open chords, and they're both sort of pretty much doing the same thing, although Noel would be doing like little picking around the chords as he's playing them. Like, so he's not doing full lead guitar lines, but he just does that sort of like he's playing the chords, but just doing little bits and pieces. And it's nice if you strip away the lead, that you can then hear the two of them working together. And it's really good fun. And I don't think you get that as much, like we said on Definitely Maybe, when you stick in all the production, you stick in the lead guitar. To actually hear the two of them and be able to pick it out a little bit better. And it'll be nice now this is out in the ether, and I'm sure people will be able to, with the spatial mix and things like that, which I haven't heard. I haven't got Apple Music, but yeah, there's like the spatial Atmos mix, and they're literally like separating out of the tracks. I'm sure that people will be able to do that a lot more now, and then be able to physically separate. And it's really nice that I'd love to be able to hear each individual stem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Digsy's Dinner, Mono Valley.
I think it's very slightly slower than the final version, and I think Digsy's Dinner is quite fun, but it's definitely if you think about the quality of the songwriting, Digsy's Dinner is definitely like a lower quality song compared to some of the others it's sitting on an album with.
How dare you!
Which is just to say that it's not one of the best songs ever written, as half a dozen other songs on that album could be accused of being. And I think that one misses out perhaps most of all of the tracks for not having all of that. I mean, there's still some really great bits. The like chorus, "These could be the best days of our lives," is still excellent, but I think it misses more than most not having that kind of studio magic applied by Owen Morris. And the end bit without the Noel plays right at the end of the track, which I really love, which I wanted to do at the end of every song I'd ever written. I wanted to do like a every time I finish the song, because I just love it so much. At the end of Dixie's Dinner, he doesn't do that, so that was a big miss for me.
Yeah,
but yeah, I do. Yeah, you can hear Noel's. There's a bit more Noel's vocal in the verse, as you say, so that's a point of distinction. It's just lacking some of the power of the finished version and the live version that they played subsequently.
Outtake doesn't have the piano, but that's understandable because the Sawmills outtake is like just the core band, isn't it? And then without the overdub. So whereas this is the final version, with that was ready to go basically. But whereas so that's understandable why it's got the piano. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's still great, and I don't know about that point about it's one of the weaker songs. I mean, obviously you're a songwriter and I'm not, but yeah, I think it's
just taste. It wasn't a comment based on what I've ever done. I just, from a personal taste perspective.
Yeah. Anyway,
how dare you?
Cool. All right. Well, look, that's the Mono Valley, and then we get into the Sawmills. So obviously we have them all again, and like I said, it's ultimately what we've got here is it's just the same sessions. So it's not like you can hear like little differences. You can hear sort of slight quirks. Obviously, we had the Columbia one that came out previously with all that, with the differences in there. For those in the media, all I can say to you, and all that sort of stuff. But so I don't know if we necessarily need to go track by track. Is it what really stood out for you on the Sawmills outtakes?
I mean, I think I'm glad we didn't have to go track by track, because I was going to say Mono Valley is interesting because it's a different moment in time, a different producer, a band finding their way in a studio, whereas the Sawmills outtakes are just the final versions, less well played because they didn't make it onto the album. So, again, interesting to hear Oasis playing those songs less than perfectly, just like as it would be interesting to hear a good quality live recording from 1993 of the band playing their songs.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in there that made me think, because there is a Slide Away, isn't there, outtake on Sawmills?
There's a Slide Away Sawmills, yeah.
Super interesting, right? Because that's the track that they took the Mono Valley version from.
Yeah.
And actually Slide Away needed that slightly cleaner guitar sound. Still got the Owen Morris Stardust sprinkled on it, but it needed, for it to be what it is, it needed to have slightly more separation, like that little arpeggio at the introduction of the good song, and you can hear just a bit more of the detail in Slide Away than some of them. That's just a big dense wall of noise. So you can see why the Sawmills ones works for that. Again, obviously we've heard the final version, so we're influenced by it, but the Sawmills one just sounds like a live track of it, and it's less. It's a bit, sort of stomps a bit more, and it glides a bit less.
Yeah.
Whereas Slide Away needs to glide.
Yeah.
And Liam's vocal is probably not as good as it was, because the vocal that Liam produced on the actual version of that song is unbelievable.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's funny. I was reading a review of it earlier, and it said, that there's that's the difference. This band, because you've got they just wanted to make it more live and so it is more ramshackle. Like, it is a lot more rough around the edges. But ultimately that's what you wanted. And so I think what you've got there is, there's the rough around the edges ness plus Owen Morris on top, just created the magic. So no, it's great to have them though. And like I said, I would literally, I mean, I can't remember who even gave it to me. Someone gave me a CD of it's about every take of Help by the Beatles, and that's just, to me, it's endlessly fascinating, all the little changes. Obviously the Beatles are a difficult comparison because these aren't that significantly different, because they were so well rehearsed, and it was just Noel saying, this is what we're doing. So when they got into the studio, they pretty much just did it. And I think Noel said in that interview, he thought there'd be loads of chatter and loads of joking around, and it's no, there wasn't. It was just, they were professional. They just got on with it and recorded. I mean, by the sounds of it, having spoken to Angeli Dutt and things, it took them a while to get them to record, but when they did, they just got on with it and recorded. So yeah. And then the last one, so we have the sad song. So obviously I talked about it on the podcast already. It's great to have it, finally. It's like one of those other uncovered Oasis gems. So yeah, sad song, Muldeth Road West demo. What's your thoughts on it?
I think you can hear why Noel decided he would sing that, based on Liam's performance of that song on the demo. Because that, again, it sounds like a very early Liam vocal. And if you want someone to croon, Noel's your man. I think any song that Liam manages to sort of successfully attack, and let's face it, Rocking Chair could be a crooned love song, and Liam belts it, and it's amazing. And it would have been great to hear a Liam 1994 belted version of Sad Song, but we haven't got that, and Liam in 2024 doesn't sing like that anymore, so we don't get it. But you can hear it and think, I get why Noel sang this ultimately, because I think his voice better suits this song as it stood. There's that sort of weird. I can't remember if it's like a bass or a very kind of fat guitar sound. They go do 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 over and over again. Like there's that little sort of. It's quite. Well, yeah, it's quite like a bubbly guitar noise, and it good ripples all the way through, which I found quite annoying because I quite like the 12-string sort of arpeggios that you get in the Knoll versions, quite rich sounding guitar. There's just like this over and over again through the song, and at the end there's that weird little bit where he changes the strumming pattern.
Yeah, so
which
strange.
annoyed me. I was like, it's at first I was like, I get it is in time, but it's quite jarring with what he's played up to that point. I was like, what is this? Like ding 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 ding. It's like mariachi, like a mariachi band's broken into the studio to play the outro. Yeah. But actually, what it reveals is that they made a sensible choice about who would sing it and what version they put out on the back of that one.
Yeah, I think the only point I would say to counter that would be, it feels like if Liam had a few more goes at it, he would have got it better. Like I think this version, you can hear it feels to me like a run through. I mean, whether it was the same as his Step Out that that leaked, like it feels like a run through. And then maybe Noel's gone like, nah, that'll do, but actually, because there's little bits where he's obviously not quite got it yet. And then when you hear like the modern Liam singing Sad Song, it's like, okay, he's now singing what became the Sad Song melody that Noel made famous on the record. So he can do it now. Obviously, it's Liam's voice now, but yeah, it is it's great to have it. That's the thing. We've wanted it for so many years. And then the other unheard, thing that we wanted for years that we've now got is not on here, which is Arm the Walrus. And I suppose I can understand why it's not on here, because, you put a Beatles cover on and suddenly you've got to pay the Beatles a load of money for having a cover of their song on the album. And they probably just wanted to avoid that, I would guess. But yeah, obviously that's out there from the Sawmills Sessions bootleg that we got. So at least it's not physically on here, but if you know where to look in the right places, or you manage to buy one of the CDs, then you can sort of stick that in and make your own kind of make your own version.
I suspect that I will periodically feel the need to go and listen to the Mono Valley versions. I don't think I'll ever really listen to the Sawmill versions because they're just like not as good versions of the final tracks, which I will listen to again. It is, as you say, great to hear new music or new versions of music by Oasis. It's been massively overshadowed this week by the fact that they're reforming, which we weren't expecting at the point this stuff was all anticipated. So, it's quite nice. Like there's a load of vibe about Oasis doing a reunion gig, and there's also some new tracks to listen to at the same time. It's like, wow, I truly have landed back in 1997. Yeah. So yeah, I just it's enjoyable, but nothing that you hear there makes you think that they didn't make very good decisions at the time about what to release and who should be singing the releases when they came.
I agree. Yeah. I think that they made the right decisions pretty much all the way through. Whenever you hear I think I said it on the podcast I don't know if it was, I get lost of where I'm talking, but I think the only time that they got it wrong was Noel singing Lord Don't Slow Me Down, like that. Liam's vocal, they should have gone with the Liam vocal. Why they didn't, I don't know. But every other choice, pretty much when you've heard an alternate version, you've heard a different vocal, you've heard like a variation, the one they went with is generally been the right one. I think Noel's got a good ear for this stuff, that he generally. Oh dear. And he said that knowing that there was a reunion in the offing and we didn't know.
No,
Amazing.
I know. It's bonkers, yeah.
It's madness, right? It's madness. But
It's also
anyway,
true. It's also true. I mean, you know, yes, he's trying to sell. Well, not that would have needed to sell tickets, but it's also the truth that Liam singing the songs makes him sound better.
yeah, except when it's the croony ones, like we said, like the sad songs and things like that.
They've made some good. They've made some good choices along the way for when to, like,
Yeah.
you know, Noel singing "Don't Look Back in Anger" being the most famous example.
Yeah, cool. Good, mate. I think we're okay then, aren't we? I think we're done.
Nailed it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, look, I'm going to go and edit this and get it out to the people who are desperate for more Oasis podcast content, because Christ, there's not enough Oasis information out, right? The fact that I'm going to put in both versions so I edit it to sound right. The fact that on the Mono Valley version of Digsy's Dinner, the fact that on the Sawmills outtake version of Digsy's Dinner, they like Noel's doing his harmony over the verse.
How dare you?